The ejection handle was right there between my knees, bright yellow, worn smooth on the grip, from years of pilots resting their hands near it without ever pulling it. It was rated for use at 0 altitude, 0 airspeed. I never touched it. 247 reasons why. That is what I told Admiral Suhan when she asked. She wrote it down. She did not smile. Nobody in that room smiled, because the report on the desk in front of her said I had ignored a direct order, exceeded manual flight parameters by a factor of 3, and flown a 40-year-old bulk transport through the edge of a dark matter filament that the navigation computer had rated as a 94% chance of total hull failure. The report was very accurate. Every number in it was correct. What the report could not explain was why. I will try to explain it now, the way it actually happened, not the way it reads on a page. 18 hours before the tribunal, I was asleep in my bunk aboard the UNS Ardent Passage. I was not thinking about heroism. I was thinking about nothing, because nothing is what you think about when you have been flying cargo routes for 14 years, and your body has learned to shut itself off the moment it gets the chance. My co-pilot, a Vrothian named Thesek Vor, had the bridge. He was good at his job, 4 arms, 2 eyes on each side of his head, and a calm so deep it sometimes felt like he had already accepted every bad thing that could possibly happen and simply moved on. I trusted him completely. The mission briefing had been short. We were to transport 247 Vrothian juvenile refugees from the shattered colony world of Veth Kalos to the sanctuary station at Meridian 9. Non-combat, humanitarian classification, expected flight time, 16 hours. I had read the manifest for about 90 seconds, noted the passenger count, confirmed life support load calculations with Thesek Vor, and then gone to sleep. That was the job. You read the numbers, you confirm the numbers, you fly. I want to be honest about something. At that point, those 247 names on the manifest were not real to me. They were a number, a weight distribution, a life support consumption rate across the cargo bay. I am not proud of that, but it is true, and I think it matters to the story. The Ardent Passage was not a beautiful ship. She was a UN Aerospace Force bulk transport, from an era when the galactic community had just begun accepting human vessels on shared routes, and the design reflected that, built for function, not impression. She had 3 main thruster clusters, a sensor array that was technically operational, if you interpreted the word operational generously, and a cargo bay large enough to hold either 200 metric tons of grain, or, as it turned out, 247 small beings who were counting on us to get them somewhere safe. I had flown her for 6 years. I knew every sound she made, every vibration, every hesitation in the port thruster, when the temperature dropped below a certain threshold. She was mine in every way that mattered. 6 hours into the flight, Thesek Vor woke me. He did not knock. He opened the door to my bunk and said, in his very flat, very precise way of speaking, "There is a gravitational anomaly on sensors. I believe you should see it." I was on the bridge in 40 seconds. What he showed me on the display took me another 10 seconds to understand, and another 30 to accept. A dark matter filament, a rare, essentially invisible structure of compressed gravitational force, was moving across our route. Not quickly, not dramatically, just steadily, the way something enormous and indifferent always moves. Our outdated sensors had not detected it until we were close enough that every alternate route around it would add so many hours to our journey that the children in the cargo bay would not survive. The life support reserves were calculated for a 16-hour flight. There was no margin for a detour. I called Convoy Master Yael at dispatch. She was already tracking it. Her voice was steady, but I have worked with Yael for a long time, and I could hear what was underneath the steadiness. She gave me the numbers I had already run myself. She confirmed there was no viable alternate route. She said the only option was to request emergency extraction, deploy a rescue beacon from the cargo bay, eject myself and Thesek Vor from the ship, and wait for a rescue vessel to reach the children. Survival probability for the children in that scenario, approximately 40%, depending on how long rescue took. I said I understood. I did not say I agreed. Thesek Vor turned all 4 of his eyes toward me when I started pulling up the manual flight override protocols. He is not an expressive being by human standards, but I had learned to read him, and what I read in that moment was something close to alarm. He asked me what I was doing. I told him I was going to fly through the edge of the filament on manual control. He told me the navigation computer had rated that at a 94% probability of hull failure. I told him I was aware of that. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The mathematics do not support this decision." I pulled up the manifest on my own screen for the first time. 247 names in Vrothian script. I cannot read Vrothian script. I stared at those names for a long time anyway. They were small on the screen, neat little rows of symbols that I could not interpret, attached to beings I had never seen and could not picture. I thought about the 40% survival number. I thought about what 40% actually means when you say it out loud. It means that if you lined up 10 of those children and gave the situation a fair chance, 4 of them would make it. I am not a mathematician, but I know a wrong answer when I see one. I told Thesic Vor to strap in and read me stress tolerances every 30 seconds. He did. The approach to the filament edge took 11 minutes. I want to describe what it was like to fly through it, because I do not think the report captures it at all. The report says, "I maintained manual stabilization throughout transit." That sentence is doing an enormous amount of work. What it was actually like was this. The instruments began lying to me about 8 minutes in. The gravitational distortion twisted the sensor data just enough that I could not trust the readouts, which meant I was flying by feel, by the sounds the ship made, by the way the controls resisted my hands, by a kind of intuition that you either develop over 14 years of flying a specific ship, or you do not. The hull groaned, not a small sound. The kind of groan that makes your body go cold in a very specific way, because your body knows what it means, even when your brain is trying to stay calm. Thesic Vor read off stress tolerances every 30 seconds, exactly as I had asked. His voice never changed. It stayed flat and precise and professional. But I noticed, somewhere around the 4th or 5th reading, that he was also saying something very quietly under his breath in Vrothian. I never asked him what it was. I did not want to interrupt it. The port thruster cluster failed at minute 8. The ship yawed hard to the left. I felt it before the alarm sounded. A sudden sickening rotation that pushed me sideways in my harness. The ejection handle was right there. My hand moved toward it. I want to be honest about that too. My hand moved toward it. Some part of me that is simply a biological creature with a preference for not dying, reached for the yellow handle. Then the secondary thrusters fired. I had been nursing those secondaries for 6 years. They were old. They were not rated for the load I was asking them to carry. I had run maintenance on them myself twice in the last 18 months, because the official maintenance schedule had gaps in it that I did not trust. They fired. They fired at exactly the moment I needed them to, held the yaw correction for exactly long enough, and then the primary thrusters came back online as we cleared the worst of the distortion zone. Some people would call that luck. I have thought about it a lot since then. I think it was preparation that looks like luck from the outside. I think those 6 years of knowing that ship, those 18 months of extra maintenance, that 11 minutes of flying by feel instead of by instrument. I think all of that is what made the thrusters fire when they needed to. But I also think there was some luck in there too, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. The hull breach alarm sounded at minute 10 and then stopped. A false positive. The sensors were still distorted enough to misread the stress data. I did not know it was a false positive at the time. In the 30 seconds between when the alarm sounded and when I realized nothing had actually breached, I made peace with several things in a way that is very hard to describe. And then the alarm stopped, and I had to put all of that away and keep flying. We came out the other side at minute 11. The instruments came back online one by one, blinking into life like lights turning on in a building after a blackout. I sat very still and waited for all of them. When the biosyn monitor for the cargo bay came back up, Thesic Vor read it out without me asking. 247. I asked him to read it again. He did. 247. All of them. Every single name on that manifest. Every symbol I could not read. Every small being I had never seen. All of them. On the other side. Alive. I did not say anything for about a minute. The ventilation system in the cockpit was clearly malfunctioning. That is the only reasonable explanation for what happened to my face during that minute. Docking at Meridian 9 was exactly as bureaucratic as docking always is. Fuel check. Hull inspection request logged. Manifest submitted for processing. I went through every step the way I always do, because the steps exist for good reasons, and skipping them when you are tired and emotional is how mistakes get made. When the cargo bay doors opened, I stayed on the bridge. I still did not look. I heard them, though. 247 Vrothian juveniles, moving from the cargo bay into the station corridors. I cannot describe the sound accurately, because I had never heard anything like it, and I do not have the right words. It was not silence. That is the best I can do. Later, sitting in the cockpit with the engines cooling around us, Thesek Vor looked at me for a long time. Then he asked the question everyone would eventually ask, in one form or another. He said, "Why did you not eject?" The mathematics were very clear. I thought about it. I thought about the right way to answer, the way that would make sense to a being who had grown up in a civilization that handled risk with precision and logic and careful calculation. I could not find the right way, so I said the true thing instead. Because 40% was the wrong answer, I told him. And I can do math too. He looked at me with all four eyes for a long moment. Then he said he had never understood humans. I told him I was not sure humans entirely understood themselves, but that it seemed to keep working out. He did not disagree. At the tribunal, Admiral Suhan asked me if I had a final statement on my decision to ignore the order to eject. I said yes. I said the manifest listed 247 names, and I still could not read a single one, and I would very much like to learn them someday, if any of them ever wanted to be in touch. She wrote that down too. My flight status was suspended for 30 days, the minimum procedural response for a protocol deviation of that category. After 30 days, it was quietly restored. I went back to flying. About 3 weeks after the flight, a small data chip arrived at the Ardent Passage through Vrothian diplomatic courier channels. It contained 247 names. Each one was written in Vrothian script, and beneath each one, in careful block letters, was the phonetic human equivalent, how you would say it out loud, if you wanted to. I printed them out. I pinned them on the instrument panel, just above the ejection handle. They are still there.